Let's dive right into this roster, gentlemen. And I'm going to be coming at you with some pointed questions right out of the gate. So we know against Japan, they were missing some players. That was abysmal. We'll get a little bit into that breakdown. 4-1 was the loss to Japan. 5 straight games as well where Japan scored 4 more goals. We know that was a lethal opponent. The Canadian goal came in the 89th minute by Junior Hoylett. So it was pretty much a wash of a game. Not that I want to rehash those types of memories, but bottom line, that was a friendly. These games matter. They need to turn it around. And 2 of the players who are back in the lineup, guys, so I want to focus on them, is Tajon Buchanan and Stefan Eustáquio. Ollie, how much better do you expect this team to be with just even those 2 players back in the lineup?
A lot better. I think Canada really has 4 kind of star players. Davids, Buchanan, and Eustáquio would be the 4 for me. And I think the difference with these 2 is that with David and Davies, you know you're going to get some magic, but you're never entirely sure when it's going to come, right? It's difficult to predict when someone's going to come up with one of those moments that those players are capable of producing. I think with Eustáquio and Buchanan, you know what you're going to get every single time you select them to play for Canada. They're 2 of the more consistent players in the squad. Eustáquio in particular, for me, ever since he debuted for Canada, has, in my opinion, been Canada's best player, most influential player on a consistent basis in terms of that game in, game out level of performance. So particularly when you look at the state of the midfield area, there are still some real questions there, even with Eustáquio available. But to have him back is a massive boost, and Buchanan as well, just another difference maker in the final third, and someone I think has really matured and developed his game to be able to play in a number of spots and be a really reliable, responsible player as well. So huge to have them back, and Canada will be significantly better for it.
Yeah, Jordan, how you feeling, right? We know Tajon Buchanan was dealing with a hamstring injury. Stefan Eustáquio, sadly, just a few days before camp for Japan, had picked up a knock with FC Porto. How you feeling with them back in the lineup?
Yeah, I'm delighted. I'm delighted to have Eustáquio just because he's in the mix of everything, right? He's in the heart. He's in the kitchen. But also he gets Canada ticking, right? You could see him on the pitch pressing, sending guys forward, telling guys to stay back. And if you're going to be Biello and if you're going to do a middle block this game, you need someone in the midfield to just be conducting things. And it's not just him going forward on the ball. His range of passes are exceptional, but it's also just the way that he breaks up plays and sees danger before it happens. I think that's a huge role playing in the midfield. You have to be a guy to do that. And then Tajon, what I love about him is I described it once as like a chip on the shoulder, how he plays, but I'll even go a bit further. I don't even think it's that. I just think it's the pace at which he starts games. Usually with wingers, they kind of have to grow into it and figure out who they're going against. Tajon Buchanan doesn't care who he's playing against. You saw it even at the World Cup. He's going after it at all times. And I think Canada needs that bit of infusion of someone who's just going to express themselves going forward. And that's what he brings. So I think those 2 really put Canada in the right direction. But again, they just got to show up and show out on the day. First in Independence Park in Kingston, but then BMO has been that fortress. They just really have to go out and play for the fans and play for themselves the second leg as well.
Wheels. Tajon Buchanan, by the way, remember a couple years ago scoring against Mexico? Just the audacity.
Classic.
Yes. All right, Wheels.
Yeah. I mean, I believe he missed last weekend through picking up a knock as well. His season has been a little bit stop-start due to some injuries that he's been battling and going through. For me, Eustáquio slots into central midfield, no doubt about that. But where does Tajon Buchanan play? It's very interesting hearing from Mauro Biello before the last window, recording this before Biello speaks on Wednesday, just about maybe where he sees Buchanan playing. Is it a like for like? Is he going to play the same formation that they played against Japan, which didn't necessarily work to perfection? Will there be some tinkering there? Is he a right back like Davies is a left back? We received the squad selection list from Canada Soccer. They put Tajon Buchanan as an attacker. Is there a world where they do play with wingers in this game? So it's more about where Buchanan will be used rather than anything else about his quality. And against Japan, I think it was quite clear to anyone that watched that game that Canada were just torn apart in the midfield. That's why Eustachio is arguably the most important player for this Canadian team, because he plays in a position of weakness for this Canadian team, and he's going to be relied upon heavily, whether that's in a 2, whether that's in a 3. I mean, he's played in a 2 with FC Porto this season, 13 starts, 15 games overall, 3 goals. He's been a driving force in the Champions League as well. So I think he can play in a 2, but it's just about how Biello wants to use these 2 players, which will be the most interesting to me.
Well, why don't we just jump into the formation then, since you're kind of leading that way, because we know against Japan, they played with 3 at the back with Kamal Miller, Derek Cornelius, as well as Alistair Johnston, I believe. And then you had more like Richie Larea. So to your point on that right, so on the left, obviously Alphonso Davies, Richie Larea, and then you had also Piet Kone. Do you think that this is, a formation that they need to adjust? I mean, we kind of know right away. I guess Eustachio goes in for Piet. I don't think anyone here is really going to debate that. But Wheels, how are you feeling about the 3 at the back, and then David and Laren were up top? Let's talk about that formation.
Didn't love it, but I can see Biello going back to it. And that is if he plays Steven Vittoria as that center back in the middle of the 3. I don't think Derek Cornelius can play that position. I mean, he just looked kind of out of whack. He's a left side of a 2, a left-sided defender. I just don't think that he commands the back 3 like a player like Vittoria can. And then it's bully ball, right? You're going down to Jamaica to play that first leg, Vittoria against Mikel Antonio. If you like that matchup, Vittoria, I mean, he's lost a step or 2, so that's going to be a difficult one. Or do you play Luc de Fougerolles in that role, or not in the middle of the 3? But I would actually prefer to see him maybe on the right side of a 3, and you can maybe adjust accordingly. There's decisions to be made here, Andy. If I'm Biello, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel here. I think that it was telling this squad selection, the fact that players like Cavallini, Marc-Anthony Kaye both come back into the team, and a lot of players with less experience like Chouanier and Bombito kind of make way. This is a squad that's eerily familiar to the World Cup. I mean, add Crepeau, de Fougerolles, and Ahmed. Other than that, like, this is a very experienced team. 11 players, 28 years of age or older. So what got this team there? It was athleticism. It was some pressing. It was defending in a 4-4-2. I think that these games are of such critical importance that maybe you need to go back to the well a little bit and maybe not try to bring something new to the table, because you just got to be pragmatic and be able to get through it. If that's the case here, then I keep things simple. I would much prefer to see 4 at the back. I'm not sure we'll actually see that, but we'll see.
Yeah, Jordo, I mean, how you feeling as well? Because the friendly, and I know I can say that I appreciate Mauro Biello wanting to give some more of those younger players to a bit of a try, wanting to do maybe a different look. But these games, like we said, they matter. You win this, it just becomes a little bit easier for you to get into Copa America. And we know how crucial that type of opposition will be as they prepare for 2026. But maybe what are some of the things that, you want to see from a formation perspective that we got to give Japan credit, guys. I've said this before.
Of course.
But at the same
Team.
time,
They're phenomenal team.
Like I said, they came in to Canada having scored 4 more goals in 4 games, and then
phenomenal.
5 straight.
Yeah, I mean, you don't panic because of that game, but I think you learn something about what you can do and maybe not do in a very short period of time.
And that's where we're going with that. So again, you look at that Japan game, bringing in more experienced players. What do you think Mauro Biello's thinking?
Yeah, I think you can't really change too much if you're Mauro Biello, and that's the thing. I feel like with Wheels, we can all appreciate, and we watch footy all the time, and looking at it, you're like, yeah, two center backs, 2 guys to really command the presence and lead a line. That'd be great. But that's also something that I would say Canada, this men's side, doesn't really know. They know the 3, they know the wing backs, they know a certain type of football. For Mauro Biello to come and change that now, I mean, it's not impossible, but it is risky, right? Because if that goes wrong, then it's like, this team has played such progressive football and go forward so well, and now they're playing a 4-4-2 or a 4-3-3, and it's not working. It's all going to be on him. So I feel like you have to go a safer approach. What I also noticed too, I think it's going to be a back 3, but also just the left-footed players that are playing in there. I agree. Derek Cornelius probably doesn't thrive playing in the middle of the back 3, just because I think that position specifically when you play with the 3 demands someone to lead the line. And there's only really one name for me, Ollie, that sticks out, that could play that spot. and that is Vittoria. Like, yes, he doesn't have the same amount of wheels as maybe you'd want, and he's not as mobile, but he does read the play really well. And he's someone that's tried and true that Biello and the camp know. So the two left-footed players, I feel like obviously you're choosing between Kamar and Miller, and you're choosing between Cornelius to play on the left side of the three, but you also wouldn't play two left-sided center backs. So it's like Vittoria for me is probably going to play with Luke. I always struggle.
Fougeron.
You know.
Sorry, buddy. Wheel said it great, and I was like, man, I need as good as he does.
Questionable.
I like your accent.
Yeah, I tried, right? The face and I think what I'm basically trying to say in a nutshell, it would be nice to change things up and put a 4, and I think a lot of people would see it, but I just don't think you can risk it at this time. And especially with the personnel that Biello brought into camp, it looks like he's going to go with the tried and true and guys that he knows to maybe just get the job done.
I actually think they're going to play a 4. And my immediate...
I'm with you.
My immediate reaction looking at this roster was what Wheels touched upon, which was this looks like a roster that could have been picked in 2021 with a couple of exceptions, right? Like Kay's back, Cavallini's back, some of the players who maybe are on the fringes or on the periphery, like a Piet, Hoylett hasn't played a ton. They're all in. So I think to me, this suggests that Mauro Biello is looking back at what worked in World Cup qualifying, and he's going to go back to that to try and get through this tie, because obviously this isn't the time to experiment. So, at times they kind of they change between a back three and a 4. Johnston would stay, the left back would go, and so it can be a back three in possession. But by and large, through qualifying, Canada defended with a back 4, whether it was 4-4-2 or 4-2-3-1 or whatever it was. It was generally a back 4. So I would think that they're going to go back to that. They're going to try and do what worked that got them to Qatar, that worked in a lot of places like Jamaica and Honduras and El Salvador. And take that approach, because I just don't think they've found yet the way to evolve this team or do something different, take the next step that's quite clicked. And so for the purpose of getting to the Copa America, this looks like a roster to me that Mauro Biello is thinking, let's go back to what we know is solid and can get us through the game in Kingston. And let's get ourselves qualified for the Copa America here.
Here's the only hiccup, Ollie, about that is Biello was pretty firm saying that Alphonso Davies is a left back or a left-sided defensive player. Yeah. Does Davies want to be grinding it out, playing left back for Canada? Obviously he's willing to sacrifice for the cause. I understand that, but I think he would look at maybe playing like with two natural wingers who are two of your top players, and Buchanan and Davies down the left. I think you need 3 center backs playing behind them, and you need defensive help in the midfield to kind of make up for maybe some of the lack of defensive prowess. So I'm with you. I think that they play better when they're defending in that 4-4-2. But that's the key here. Alphonso Davies to this formation, how he's going to be used will be critical on the shape of the team. And if he does keep this kind of 3-5-2 formation, the one alteration he can make, and I think it's one he needs to consider, is whether you play 1 up top or 2. Whether you play David and Laren, just David, and then maybe add another body to the midfield, maybe a player more playing in a number 10 role. That's something I'd take a look at as well. But I just can't see wholesale changes or a completely different way of being played, because these games are massive. There's no selling this short here. Like or overstressing how important these games are. These are critical games for Canada.
Yes.